Hey there everybody, today I'm going to show you how to make a really cool 3D paper standing Christmas tree. I made this template about 5 years ago now, but I've never done a video on it. I only had a written blog post, so I decided it was time to do a video. It's very simple on the supply list. I do recommend having a cutting machine for this just to make it easier, but I do include printable PDFs with the free templates if you'd like to use scissors. Of course, you'll need a cutting mat if you're using a cutting machine, and then you'll need some sort of cardstock. I recommend 65-pound cardstock. Don't go over 80 or it's going to be too thick to bend. And you'll want it in your choice color, so like a Christmassy green, and then I'm doing a gold for the star on top. You're also going to need some sort of bamboo skewer or thin wood dowel in order to actually build the tree. So I'm using a bamboo skewer here, but you could definitely use like a 1/4-inch wood dowel or something like that. The reason I recommend a bamboo skewer is because it has a point and you'll be able to actually punch the paper through it much easier than if you were trying to use a wood dowel that doesn't have a point. As far as adhesive goes, I'm going to be using a hot glue gun for this, but you could use a liquid glue. The hot glue gun is just going to be beneficial because it dries faster, so it'll speed the process up. As far as the number and the count of what you'll need in order to build the Christmas tree, make sure you visit the blog post that goes with this. It's linked below in the video description. It's also where you can find the free templates. So I'm going to go over the count and measurements if you need them at all in that blog post in detail. So let's go ahead and get started. I've already uploaded all of my STG files in Cricut Design Space, and I'm going to go ahead and cut just a few more of these templates out. I've got most of them cut out here. So I'm going to load my mat when it's prompting me. And there's more information in the blog post if you need help learning how to upload an SVG to Cricut. I'll cover that as well in the blog post so that you know how to get from start to finish, even if you're new to Cricut Design Space and using a Cricut machine. Once my machine is flashing and telling me to go, I'm going to press go. I have selected a medium weight cardstock since that is what I'm using here. And it's going to cut our design out. Alright, our cut is done. I'm going to unload the mat here. When you're removing cardstock, make sure you peel the mat away from the material. It will really help keep your cardstock material from curling on you. So that's really important to do. Do it with all material. You can do it with vinyl and other things like that. So. Again, for the exact count that I'm using here, make sure you visit that blog post because it's going to go over it in more details with some other things you're going to need to know. And it's easier to explain written than it is here in the process. So I have lots of different sizes cut out here. I'm going to set the smaller ones aside and we're going to work from the bottom up. As far as assembly goes, let's go over that. So for each of these, it's going to be made exactly the same way. You're going to need to take the design and you're going to need to take each one of these little pieces and you're going to fold them so that they come to a point. So this is where you're going to use your hot glue gun and you're just going to get a little bit of glue right there and give it a moment and then move on to the next one. And that's why I like using a glue gun instead of like traditional liquid glue, because it's going to take so much longer if you had to hold each one of these. I did try using sort of like a scrapbooker's tape and some of them popped off, so I don't recommend that. I was thinking I could just tape all the edges up real quick and then go around and eliminate the process of picking up the glue gun, but it didn't end up working out. So glue gun is the way to go in my opinion. And you're just going to keep going around until they form all those little points. And you're literally going to repeat this for every single layer in all of the sizes. This is the most time-consuming and patient testing part of this craft, but if you can get past it and just kind of get lost in the pleasure of making something with your hands, then it goes by rather quickly and you'll have something really beautiful in the end. What I love about making things like this with paper crafts is they can be used year after year. So once you make them once, as long as you take care to store them in a cool, dry place like a large plastic container, you'll be able to use them time and time again. So it's something that's really a one-time investment with your time and effort, and they also make really beautiful, unique gifts as well. This is what one of them is going to look like once you get all of those points glued together. You're going to be building it from this side facing up. So you're not going to see the side where it's overlapping. You're going to build it from here. What you're actually going to do is put some pressure right in the middle, and you're going to want to crease at the base of each one of these pieces. Just like that. So that's exactly what you need to do with all of the other pieces. as you work, you can kind of just stack them as they're going to be displayed as we build them up. Of course, we're gonna have to remove them and put the bamboo skewer through them, but I like to just stack them to see my progress as I'm going. As you work down to the smaller sizes, it is going to get a little more cumbersome when you're folding these pieces because they are naturally getting smaller. So just take your time with it. And like I said, this is the most time consuming part of it, but as you can see, this piece here is a lot tighter than what we started off on this piece. So it just takes a little bit more patience now, especially when you get down to the last one here. It is definitely a little bit of a challenge, but I will show you a bit of a trick for that as well. When you get down to these super teeny tiny ones, it's going to be virtually impossible to add glue and to overlap it. So what I do is I take the bamboo skewers that we're planning on using and I literally just drastically curl it and sort of pinch it. And instead of the last couple tiny ones being fastened with glue, I literally use my fingers and just bend the paper. And then that way it still creates that final little top piece that we need in order to make the tree look complete without trying to actually glue them, because it becomes a little bit challenging. If you want to give it a try, you can, but this is what I generally do, and it still achieves the proper look without trying to actually get a teeny dot of glue on there. If you do want to try gluing it, then I recommend maybe choosing liquid glue for this, because the the hot glue will be a little bit thick to work with on something so small, but something as simple as a curl will work for the teeny tiny like top couple pieces. Okay, so I have prepped all of my Christmas tree pieces here. I'm also going to go ahead and prep the star. So this is just a basic star, nothing special really about it. I have 6 of these pieces cut out here. So I'm just taking each one and folding it down the center here. If you have a cutting machine and that's what you're using, which I do recommend, then you could add a score line down the center too. There's free score lines available in Cricut Design Space that you could put down the center of the star template here. But that's really up to you. You can just easily fold it. Now you can use hot glue to glue these together because we're going to be kind of creating a 3D effect. I'm actually going to opt for a liquid craft glue here because I don't want the bulkiness of the hot glue when I'm dealing with layers that I want to be very flush. So I'm actually going to opt for that, but you could use hot glue as well if you prefer. This is a little bit more of a fine tip applicator. It will take a few minutes to dry, so I will be setting this aside before I move on to adding it to my Christmas tree. Alright, so as I built these pieces, I just kind of stacked it to see how it would look. We're now going to be taking our bamboo skewer, and you want the pointed side to be up, so it's up at the top here, not at the bottom, because we're basically going to be using that pointed side to stack all of these pieces onto, and it's going to give it like a center support. So I'm going to remove these here. Alright, so I've deconstructed some of the bottom here so that I can start building. Of course, you're going to start with the largest piece and you're going to keep going from there. I have 2 of the largest pieces at the bottom, 3 of the next size, and then 2 of the following size. So I'm starting with those first. The first one's just going to be the most awkward. If you would like to put a little score, I'm actually going to add a little score line to the design file to help you guys. So that you'll know the exact center point. So I didn't do that in this video here, but as a second thought here, I'm going to add a little score line to the center of this. It'll make it even easier to make sure you're placing it right into the center, because that is kind of important. For me, I'm going to just kind of wing it. Give it a little pressure. And you want to push it down. And then when you get to the bottom here, you're going to want the bottom to be basically flush. So what I like to do is load the bottom part here up with some hot glue. And then I just sort of whittle it down until it is almost completely flush. And let that hot glue kind of just dry on there so that it can't fall off the end. And then if you want, you could also take a piece of paper while that hot glue is drying and just add that right to the bottom, so that it can't come out the other side there. So it's going to be a little loose and floppy at first because there's nothing kind of structuring this up here, so just keep that in mind. That is normal. Okay, I'm going to add the next one on here. And then you might be noticing here as I'm building the tree, you want to aim to alternate these points of the tree. So this point here for this piece I just added is falling in between these 2 points below it. That's what's going to give it that lifelike nature to the craft. All the heavy lifting is really up front when you're building all of these little points, and at this point it's really kind of fun to just slide everything onto your center here. As you're working with this, you might need to shift some of these pieces a little bit and kind of whittle it to get it kind of sitting squarely up there and not leaning to one side or the other. So you might have to just shift it slightly as you're working. Again, if you want to know all of the number of these templates I am using to build this exact Christmas tree here, I have them all listed in the blog post. It's just easier to list them out than to try and keep it all straight here because there's so many variations of the size here. I think there's at least 10 or 12 size variations, but I'm gonna document all of that in the blog post, which you can find below this video. All right, so I'm just gonna keep going here. Like I said, you might need to shift your tree a little bit from time to time. If you want to come in here and kind of shift and even loosen some of these pieces to make it just look a little bit more natural, kind of spin them around, then you can as well. Sort of shift the tree a little bit. All right, there we go. So the last step is going to be to add the star, but we also want to trim down what's left of our skewer here. So if you wanted to be really ambitious and add a lot more layers, like add some extra larger layers to the bottom and then add more small ones to the top and make it a very tall tree, then you could do that. I'm going to stop here for just time's sake in general. It took me about 2.5 hours to cut and assemble all of these, and then another maybe 20 minutes to assemble this part of the tree all together. So now that I have added all of my stars back to back here, so I've literally just folded each in half and stacked them together so that they're kind of like a little honeycomb accordion, and we're gonna wrap it around the tree. So the first thing I wanna do is I wanna assess exactly where the star is gonna stop, and then I wanna trim below that so that you can't see this. So I'm getting about right here. You really don't need all that much to get the star on. And bamboo skewers are pretty like thin, so you could even use a pair of scissors to just trim that off, or you could use some wire clippers. So I'm just gonna clip this down. And I'm just gonna place this around the remainder part of that bamboo skewer at the top there. And kind of get this all evened out. I have these little like mini sewing clips that I use sometimes when things are drying. Again, you could use hot glue, but for this one I prefer to use a little bit of crafting glue just because I didn't want a lot of like thick hot glue in between these very thin layers. Alright, so I'm just gonna let that dry for a couple of minutes. Okay, so my star is dry now, so you can kind of see how that looks. And this next part, actually everything going forward is completely optional here. I'm just continuing to dress it up as I would like. You could stop right here and be completely done if you want. But this is going to be the tree collar template to go around the base of it, just to elevate it a little bit more. I didn't have this included in my original template, but it kind of occurred to me at the last minute that I thought, oh, well, it might be something nice to just dress it up a little bit more. So when you get this template, you'll cut it out and you'll just fold along the tabs. Very, very easy. So once you get the tabs folded, just take the 2 tabs on this side and add some hot glue and just curl that around into a circle. Okay, And then what you can do is just fold these tabs down like so. Alright, so once you've done that, I've also cut out a cardboard circle here. I ended up just using a pair of scissors, but there is a template included for a cutting machine as well. And you're going to glue that on top. So I'll just go around and add my glue and then place this right on top. I'm going to kind of press it down and hold it for a minute there. This is just going to give it more stability when we set the tree on top of it. And don't worry about any major imperfections here. You won't be able to see it at all underneath the tree. You literally have to flip it upside down and like be staring at it. So there's absolutely no reason this has to be like super perfect because you're not even gonna be able to see it. Okay, there we go. So now if you want, you can add a generous amount of glue and we can set our Christmas tree squarely on top of that base. And it elevates our tree that much more, and I'm going to show you a side profile picture of it here in just a minute once I get this set on. So I'm going to first add a bunch of glue here. Pick that up, set it down, kind of look at it from the front and make sure it's not leaning, much like putting up a real Christmas tree. Okay, so now I can carefully pick my Christmas tree up here and kind of show you guys on the bottom how that went on. Just like that. And here's one little fun thing you can do if you want. So I'm experimenting with this. I've never done it before. We're gonna see how it turns out. I have some little twinkle lights, super tiny ones, and this little box here that flips them on. So the purpose of the tree collar as well is to hide this box. So you can actually set this just like that and be able to turn on Christmas tree lights on it. So I'm going to decorate the lights around it first and then go from there. So these are like super tiny twinkle lights and it's kind of like wire. So I'm going to just tuck it in one side here and start sort of wrapping the tree.
So here's how the tree turned out with the little Christmas lights on it. Of course you could leave the Christmas lights off if you wanted to, but I wanted to sort of test that to get an idea of what that would look like. And I think it looks really cute. It looks even better when you turn the lights off, because when you turn the lights off you can't even see like the wire, it's just the twinkling lights with the tree. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and make sure you download these free templates. The link is below in the video description. I'll see you there. Bye for now and Merry Christmas.